We have several challenges in the country, and many people are concerned about so many things that are happening. There's concern about the leadership of the ANC. There's also a concern about the economic growth of the country. And there's also a concern that it looks like the disparity between the poor and the rich is widening every day. And that it looks like wealth is concentrated in the hands of the few elites, which some of them are historical, some of them were created by the BEE. But ladies and gentlemen, true as that may be, in South Africa, there's a deeper problem that we really need to talk about. Because sometimes the greatest betrayal of peace, ladies and gentlemen, it's not the evil works of evil people, but the silence of the good people. Many good South Africans are quiet on very serious and critical issues that are happening in the country and the direction in which we are taking. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the problem with South Africa has nothing to do, most of the problems that we have, honestly, we can fix on our own. With determination and seriousness and focus, we can be able to address the issue of economic growth. We can address the issue of slow progress of the country, because these are the things that are within our reach. It's just that South Africa has never had an integrated vision and a direction that we have to take. At the moment, we see people backtracking. Others now are becoming focused on nationalistic issues, such as the Afrikaners nationals. We have Black Africans who wants to go back to Black African spirituality. So we see the progress that has been gained since 1994 getting lost slowly. And now the question is, why do we find ourselves in this situation wherein the employment has risen, and most of the Black young people, and also white in some cases, are beginning to feel the impact of joblessness? How did we get here? How did a country that is rich in platinum got into this situation? How could it be that one of the countries that got the best diamonds on earth is in this situation? How is it that with the gold reef of Johannesburg, we have a problem? How come is it that with mines that we still have this problem? How is it that a democratic country which has got a political stability, there's elections, everything is going well as far as elections are concerned? What is really our problem? South Africans, we need to be very serious about this issue, and we need to be very critical, and we need to acknowledge that the historical injustices of this country has led to so many factors that you see today. What you see today is not the problem that was generated overnight, or it's not the problem that came with the ANC. It's a generational problem over 300 years ago. This all began in 1652 with the arrival of the Dutch. And we have to be honest about this, ladies and gentlemen. If we are serious about building South Africa, we need to be honest about what has happened and what those things that happened led to. The problem of race relation is what I see as a threat to national security of South Africa. The two races, ladies and gentlemen, I will refer to all the other races under black, Indian, coloreds, and other minorities. All of them under black, and the white race, because this is the serious challenge that we have in South Africa. All other challenges we can address, but until we are one house with one determination, we are not going anywhere, because scriptures are very clear that a house divided against itself cannot stand. South Africa, ladies and gentlemen, has been divided for so long. That is why our progress is not so strong. We've made some strides to make progress, but we could have done better. You see, the problem of 1652 was the arrival of the Dutch. And the Dutch, ladies and gentlemen, upon their arrival here, they arrived with the doctrine of Calvinism, talking about predestination, signifying, according to the view of the Dutch at the time, that the Dutchman or the white race is predestined to dominate over the black race. And if you are predestined for something, it doesn't matter what happens, the outcome will be the same. if you were predestined for salvation of God, you will be saved. And if you are predestined for damnation, it doesn't matter what you do and how much you do it, you cannot impress God. The predestination stands against you. So that is the general feeling that the Afrikaners, who were Dutch at first, upon their arrival and changed to Afrikaner, came with. That's a very, very dangerous attitude, ladies and gentlemen. And again, another conviction that they came with was the conviction that was supported spiritually but by the Dutch Reformed Church, the very same church that came with the Dutch. Now, that conviction was that they believe that they are the lost tribe of Israel. And those of you who have biblical backgrounds, or those of you who are Bible academics, you will know that the children of Israel, the tribe of Israel, was not supposed to mix with any other tribes. They were not supposed to intermingle with other tribes and the gods of other tribes. They were supposed to be leading, and they were supposed to be dominating wherever they go. Wherever they go, they were supposed to take over land, and they were supposed to enslave the other nation that remains that they don't defeat. That was that is how it should be with the Israel in the Old Testament. So the Afrikaners strongly believe that it is a lost tribe of Israel. And that conviction, ladies and gentlemen, has led to all the issues that you saw in South Africa, all the injustices that happened from that time until today. We can blame so many things. We can blame poor leadership. We can blame this and that and that and that, ladies and gentlemen. The truth of the matter is that South Africa has always been divided along those lines. The conviction of the Afrikaners that they are superior race has always been a problem. Well, I understand upon their arrival in those days, generally Europe was despising black people all over the world, all over Africa. So the Afrikaners themselves were not an exception. And we need to understand the psychology of the Afrikaner. We need to understand the psychology of the black person, and we need to understand whatever they went through has produced today and how it led us to where we are. So that, ladies and gentlemen, we can build in a proper foundation, because as it is, their foundation is very bad right now. So as I said, that was the foundation of the Afrikaner. So many Afrikaners today has forsaken that view, but it was deeply entrenched in the foundation of Afrikanerism in South Africa, so much that even today, even those who forsook that idea, they still see a white man as someone who should be in charge for things to be correct. I mean, that has also affected black people themselves. They believe that for them to do something that is meaningful, it has to be approved by their white counterparts. So these things have led to so many things and led the country to where it is, ladies and gentlemen. Upon the arrival of the voortrekkers, as they were called, there were so many conflicts over the issue of the land, resources, space, and so on and so on. And the situation that was prevailing at the time was the slave environment that was created at the time. If you want to hear more about that, you may listen to the previous videos, that the previous video that was released on the arrival of the Boers. So now 1795, the British Empire come, take over the Cape Colony from the Afrikaner. Now, that in itself came with its own implication, because from that time onwards until somewhere around 1834, when the British Empire was releasing slaves from its old colonies, the Cape Colony was not an exception. The white people, the Afrikaner at the time, were instructed to release the slaves. And now that came as a great disruption to the way of life of the Afrikaner, because suddenly he has to get rid of the slaves that were an economic base for him. And anyway, to the Afrikaner psyche, a black man is supposed to be saving the white man. The white man should be ruling. The white man should be dominating. And this is the will of God. So the British Empire is directly fighting against God himself by doing so. And the Afrikaner felt that he cannot stand for this. Around 1836, he was engaged in one of the greatest trek that took place in the Cape Colony of the Afrikaners. Not all of them, but majority of them decided to leave. And they felt that what the British Empire was doing was abomination, because they were trying to equate them, the Afrikaner tribe, with natives, the Khoisan and the Xhosas, which according to them, it's against the will of God. So it was a serious abomination committed by the British Empire. So the Afrikaners left, they engaged in the trek, indicating the issues of self-determination and wanting to be out of the dominance of the British Empire. But the truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, we know that the biggest issue there was they did not want to integrate, and they didn't want to be dominated. They did not want to find themselves integrating and to have a law that is treating them equally with the natives, because you understand that their true conviction is that they are the lost tribe of Israel. Very dangerous foundation, ladies and gentlemen. And that foundation was to go on with them for generations until today. So now they left, and I have to be honest with you, the Afrikaners were very resilient. You know, they overcame so many obstacles, and there were so many hostilities that they came across on the way as they were driving into the north with ox wagons. There were fights everywhere, there were conflicts, there were hardships of all kinds, and some of them died on the way, but they continued until to the end. That is why there's one thing that the Afrikaner is right about, and something that the Afrikaner is determined about. The Afrikaner is strongly convicted that he is an African and he belongs to Africa, and it does not really associate with Europe, although he has got a Europe heritage, but he sees himself as an African and is ready to do whatever it takes for him to stay in Africa and thrive in Africa. That is why it came with no surprise when they rejected the offer of President Trump of granting them refugee statuses, because they don't see themselves as Americans, they see themselves as Africans, and they are determined. So ladies and gentlemen, it is in that background that every one of us must understand that the Afrikaners are here to stay. We must understand that they were able to make it from the Netherlands with those ships in those days to South Africa for a reason. God has always wanted to create a multicultural society in South Africa. That is why we have so many people in a homogeneous society. Although we have a problem, the Afrikaner was able, through his military advantage and some the advantages of technology, was able to subdue the other tribes, fighting his way out to make sure that he stands on top. So to the Afrikaner psychology, ladies and gentlemen, things are not right when he's not in charge. Things will not go right when he is not in charge, because he believes, as I said to you, the foundation is the lost tribe of Israel. This psyche has affected so many of them. Even those who forsook that idea, they were still affected because it was deeply entrenched. So that is the problem that we are going through in South Africa, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, time moved on. There came a time when diamonds were discovered in Kimberley. And when they were discovered, the British Empire decided to annex the Kimberley area and make it part of their colony, so that they can continue mining and taking ownership of the diamond mines. And one thing that we must remember, ladies and gentlemen, is that at the time, black people were now subdued because they had to suffer under the hands of the Afrikaner and also the British Empire itself. So at that time when diamonds were discovered, the Afrikaner in his quest of trying to be by himself and trying to be isolated and trying to preserve the culture and his heritage pure. It so happened that as they were moving into the north, they realized that there are so many hostilities and it is possible for them to be completely annexed from off the face of the earth. So that brought with it fear into their hearts. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that fear is still in the heart of the Afrikaner today. An average Afrikaner is very intimidated of black people. That is why you hardly see them in townships. You hardly see them in areas which black people are dominating, because they don't feel safe. And you know, the question is, for how long will a white man feel unsafe in South Africa? And for how long will he be trekking? Because that trek that they started with was not the first and certainly was not the last trek. Well, they had conflicts with the British Empire and with the Zulu Kingdom as well. The Zulu Kingdom was eventually crushed. We saw the victory of the Blood River and so on and so on and so on, because we must remember the Afrikaners themselves were resilient and they were determined to survive. And I believe the help of God was on their side at the time, because God, I believe, did not want them to be destroyed. That is why He allowed them to reach the shores of South Africa despite the Cape storms and other challenges of the sea. So, ladies and gentlemen, at that point, when the diamond mine was discovered, it did not translate into any meaningful economic advantage for black people, because at that time they were subdued and they were afflicted and they were looked down upon as second-class citizens. All that they were needed for was just a cheap labor, so cheap that it was even impossible to save anything for this current generation. That is why we have the disparity between the rich and the poor today. We continue a few years later, the gold reef in Gauteng was discovered. Again, the natives did not really benefit anything from that mine. The people who benefited are companies, big companies and corporations that came from all over the world to come and mine. The black people at the time were still used as cheap labor, and other black people who came from neighboring countries of SADC and Central Africa, they were used as cheap labor just to enrich foreigners from Europe, from the United States and other parts of the world in making sure that they provide that labor. But it did not really translate much for them. That is why we find ourselves where we are. And whenever we talk about generational wealth that was obtained by white people, it comes as an offense to them to say, no, you guys, you should be blaming your poor leadership of the ANC and so on. But ladies and gentlemen, honestly speaking, ANC was only in power for 30 years now. We are talking about generations. We are talking about over 100 years of amassing of wealth by the Afrikaner, honestly speaking, and the white race generally in South Africa. So therefore, we need to be, I think the Afrikaners and the white people in South Africa must be considerate and understand that this situation did not develop itself. I see that every time the government tried to engage in a restitution program, the AfriForum, the Solidarity, the Freedom Front will be opposing it, including the DA in some cases. Thank God the DA now is part of government, so whatever the decision that has been taken, they have to be broad-minded and understand that for the country to work, there has to be a redress, and there has to be understanding that the economy of South Africa was built by the cheap labor of black people, and it did not translate to anything for them economically. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very hard to speak to the leader of AfriForum and Solidarity about those issues. And I'm not so sure if the over 600,000 membership of the AfriForum is having the same view over this matter. But ladies and gentlemen, if we are serious about making South Africa a better place, we have to talk about these things. That fear of the Afrikaners and the insecurity of not wanting to associate with his neighbors and also of wanting to dominate has led him to, to remain fearful all this time. The first strike took place, they ran away into the north, right? Now, during the dawn of democracy in the early 90s, we'll see now a land purchased and Orania getting established at the time, because this is another threat, because a black man is about to take over. Yet it was not really a victory of the black man as such. It was the unification of South Africa into a new South Africa, but in the Afrikaners' mind, that was the overturning of the Blood River. He did not see it as a new South Africa. He saw it as a defeat to the Afrikaner, which is unacceptable, and he felt it's not going to be safe. Now for over 30 years now, the AfriForum has been waiting for the genocide of white people, which did not take place. That is why now the issues now are coming forth of afflictions of white people and seizing of farms, which does not even exist. So we must understand, ladies and gentlemen, that the Afrikaner, you've never felt safe in your own country for a very long time, because you don't believe that you have to be equal with your black counterparts. You've been running away from place to place, not settling, because you try so hard for all these years to remain in power and to make sure that you dominate everyone around you. It is a very difficult burden to carry, and I don't know how long will you be able to carry this. You live in fear, you live in insecurity, you live doubting, you are not so sure whether you must go back to Europe, you are not so sure whether you must stay. And this is a burden, ladies and gentlemen, for black people. And now the guilt of things that have been done by their forefathers in their minds, that guilt is very real, ladies and gentlemen. And I want all black Africans and black South Africans to understand that there's a guilt in the mind of an average Afrikaner of what has happened. And in his mind, he was so convinced in the 90s that he would want to pay revenge. And in some cases, he convinces himself that that situation is real. Yet, ladies and gentlemen, black South Africans love their white people, honestly. They've been trying to integrate with them, getting into their school, getting the approval of white people. We know generally that usually black people would like, if they have the approval of a white person on something, it means a lot to so many of them. And this is historical. And those are some of the things that we need to correct, and those are the things that we have to understand, that things like apartheid have succeeded in entrenching those kind of thinking. So, ladies and gentlemen, it will take white men and black men to be able to build South Africa. The heritage of South Africa belongs to whites and blacks, and the history of whites and blacks is intertwined in South Africa. You cannot talk about Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd without talking about Chief Albert Luthuli. You cannot talk about Piet Retief without talking about King Dingane. You cannot talk about the development of South African economy without the cheap labor of the black people. So that is why I'm surprised that in Orania, I see the statues of people like D.F. Malan, Hendrik Verwoerd, and so on and so on and so on. And those people, ladies and gentlemen, were not alone as they were creating whatever history they created. So I see the distortion of history in Orania. You are losing in the rich heritage of South Africa. You're supposed to have more statues of people who were instrumental in the history of South Africa. So this idea that the Afrikaner has to be isolated by himself and not integrate with other races in the name of self-determination, ladies and gentlemen, it will not hold in South Africa. It will not hold, because it was not meant to be like that. The destiny of a white person is intertwined with the destiny of a black person. If a white person is to succeed, he needs a black person. And a black person also need to work with the white person. And ladies and gentlemen, why is it so difficult to get this right? Perhaps this is a spiritual problem, because in a way it originated spiritually. We may need to deal with it very strongly spiritually. But I urge all South Africans to make a commitment and determination that will make this place a better place. I mean, right now the AfriForum have reported the issue to President Trump. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there will be any help from the United States. The United States now is pursuing a policy of America first. They are de-associating and cutting ties with all other nations. They are looking at America only. If whatever you are talking about is not to the benefit or contribution into the American economy, you mean nothing to them. So the white people of South Africa must understand that we are together here. South Africa is all we have. We have to work for it, and we have to make sure that we make it a better place. Going outside will not help. The problem is internal, and it will require us to solve the problem. So ladies and gentlemen, all South Africans, let's understand that the injustices of the past against black people have created an inferiority complex, hardships, poverty, and the situation that we find ourselves in today. And at the same time, the added advantage of white people, historical advantage, has led them to stability economically. It has led them to be able to develop more and more and more than black people. And as such, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a mentality of superiority that was created in the white, in the mind of a white person, and in the white of a black person. Inferiority and poverty has led to something else. That is why you see so much violence in the country. That is why you see so much violent crimes. People are growing in terrible situations, and those situations are leading them to, to feel like they have nothing to lose, and the anger keeps on building up because this pain is generational. Every time a young boy is born in a black poverty-stricken family, they inherit that anger. That is why you see it manifesting in farm murders, in the streets, everywhere, and in all the crimes that are committed in the country. So it is our responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. The white race must use the economic advantage that they have for the well-being of everyone in the country, not to concentrate everything in the hands of Afrikaners, trying to make them have their economy focus on only them and forget about the rest of the country. You cannot exist outside the rest of the society. So ladies and gentlemen, black people as well must also understand that there's a white guilt and there is white fear, which is very real. So let's try our best to accommodate one another and then try to redeem one another from the injustices of the past. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's fix the issue of race and improve race relation, and South Africa will get somewhere. Thank you.